OK, GBNews presenter Darren Grimes joins me now. Hello, Daz. Always a pleasure. Darren, before we get on to the Suella Braverman situation, can I get your reaction, please, to the news we heard on Patrick Chris's show momentarily back there? Colonel Richard Kemp telling us regiments have been warning their veterans not to wear medals, insignia or regalia on their journeys to remembrance events for fear of safety from protesters.
That's why it's so important, Martin. I think it's a really important story that GBNews has shone the light on there, because that's why it's important that people like Suella Braverman in positions of power do speak out. Because what we've got here are those who've served our country, who have been awarded with medals for valour and bravery, being unable to wear those medals in our country for fear of threats or intimidation or even attacks. We saw a veteran attacked in Edinburgh only the other day. Martin, I think it's really deeply troubling, and it just shows the dire straits that Britain finds itself in right now.
And do you think, Darren, looking at events as they've unfolded, 2,000 coppers on patrol, the cenotaph on lockdown, protesters being threatened with arrest if they go near these sacred moments at this sacred time, Suella Braverman saying all along there's been two-tier policing, maybe she had a point.
Absolutely right. I mean, look, Martin, you know as well as I do that we had in the media Trump derangement syndrome, we had Brexit derangement syndrome. I think right now, at this moment, we've got a really, really virulent case of Suella derangement syndrome. Because actually, if you look at the polling on this, Martin, the Telegraph just put out a piece saying that actually 72% of Conservative voters actually believe that the planned protest around the Armistice Day, the commemorating Armistice Day, actually shouldn't go ahead. It shouldn't be able to go ahead. So Suella Braverman scribbles a few words in the Times to that effect, and it seems every left-wing nutter and their dog, Martin, come out frothing at the mouth, absolutely full of drama and outrage. And when you ask them, Martin, what is it that you actually take exception to? What is it that Suella Braverman's arguing that have got your knickers in a twist? And when you say that, it's just tumbleweeds and crickets, Martin. And I think that in and of itself is pretty damn telling.
An interesting point, Darren, made there. If you come for her, you come for us. And the Tory rights are circling the wagons around Suella. Do you think if she gets the chop over this, if that surrender is taken to the Starmers, the Sadiq Khans, the Yvette Coopers, what would that mean for the future of the Conservative Party, Darren?
Look, I think in areas like this, Martin, where, the red wall facing seats, where they've got Labour breathing down their neck in the polls at the minute, I think Tory voters in this part of the world would just stay home. They would say, I see absolutely no point, Martin, in actually coming out to vote for a Conservative Party that doesn't stand for someone who's making really, really quite laudable and reasonable points, which is around actually the protection of our commemorations, our remembrance, and the sanctity of those events, actually. I think it's really vile stuff that we've heard on the streets of London and elsewhere, describing Jews as filth, as usurpers, and actually urging followers to tear them apart. Now, that's their language, calling for intifada and all these other things. Voters up here, Martin, are saying, what the hell's going on in London? And I think actually if the likes of Jeremy Hunt don't get on board and start defending people like Suella Braverman, well, many Tories will just conclude there's absolutely no point whatsoever in coming out to vote for them.
Now, Darren, of course, Suella has offended a lot of people within her own party, as well, of course, as her opponents. One here in Northern Ireland calling her a pound shop Enoch Powell, Colin Eastwood. And, of course, many within her own party are increasingly uncomfortable about what they see as the direction of travel within the party. But it remains to be said, the vast majority of Tory voters that I've seen, especially on the Conservative media, have come out in her support. Do you think if the Tory party gets wiped out at the next general election, which seems likely with the direction of travel, they may be a forest fire, a regrowth? And Darren, could you see somebody like Suella heading up a resurgent, new, reborn Conservative Party movement?
I think it's looking increasingly likely that someone like Suella will be a serious contender for the leadership of the Conservative Party. But, you know, Martin, that depends on who actually maintains their seats. If the polls are to be believed, frankly, you know, it's going to be a complete wipeout. But what she's saying here, the police are about as impartial as a fox in a hen house. And I think we actually need someone with the authority, with the clarity to actually come out and say things like that. I mean, Martin, it won't have been missed on you either that Yvette Cooper attacked the police after the Sarah Everard vigil, right? And now she calls Suella Braverman worse than goodness only knows what for doing exactly the same. You know, I just think we've got to get real. We are at a point now where, Martin, we just don't have the time to be debating these kind of things. We've got to get serious about the threat that we face in Britain and actually get real about the challenges that are present right now, here and now. I'm really worried about tomorrow and what tomorrow's going to look like. And how depressing. Can you imagine me coming on and saying that 10 years ago, maybe? That actually I'm worried about Remembrance Day or Armistice Day and actually being able to actually commemorate people like my granddad, for example. It's just, it's sickening, Martin. That's what it is. I'm really, really troubled and concerned about the direction of my own country.
Darren Grimes, thanks for joining us here on the Patrick Christmas Show. Powerful words there as ever.